You shall not let them pass, neither here nor anywhere else. Victory is our goal, and victory we shall have. These words by French General Robert Nivelle, spoken during the Battle of Verdun, symbolized the determination of nations in a war that had already claimed millions of lives. By 1916, the trenches still stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border, and the war showed no signs of an ending. 1916 would prove to be one of the bloodiest and most pivotal years of the conflict, with major battles, political shifts, and a new level of total war. This is HistoryCrafts. The year began with one of the longest and most devastating battles in history, the Battle of Verdun. Located in northeastern France near the Meuse River, Verdun had long been a critical stronghold guarding the French heartland. Verdun wasn't just a fortress city, it was a symbol of French pride and resilience. On the 21st February, German forces launched a massive assault with the goal of bleeding France dry, forcing the French to commit enormous resources to defend this culturally and strategically significant location. Verdun became a symbol of French resilience and suffering. Over the course of 10 months, approximately 23 million artillery shells were fired, leaving the battlefield a wasteland of craters and shattered earth. The German attack force peaked at 1 million soldiers, while the French defenders endured immense losses, with 377,000 casualties compared to the 337,000 on the German side. The phrase "Ils ne passeront pas," they shall not pass, became a rallying cry for the French. The Battle of Verdun was especially cruel. Neither fronts would gain significant ground. General Philippe Pétain became a national hero for his leadership during Verdun. His strategy of rotating troops through the front lines kept morale higher than expected, but the human cost was staggering. And while Verdun was raging, the Allies planned another massive offensive on the Western Front. The Battle of Somme began on the 1st July, and it would become one of the deadliest battles in human history. The offensive was intended to relieve pressure on Verdun and break through German lines. The Somme River runs through northern France, a region characterized by rolling hills, small villages, and farmland. The terrain, however, turned into a quagmire of mud and craters as the battle raged, creating immense challenges for advancing troops. The British, led by General Douglas Haig, and the French aimed to push the Germans back. However, the first day of the battle saw catastrophic losses for the British, nearly 60,000 casualties in one single day. The Battle of Somme introduced new technologies, including the first use of tanks in warfare. Designed by engineer Sir William Triton and Major Walter Gordon Wilson, the Mark I tank was a mechanical marvel for its time. Built to break the stalemate of trench warfare, it was slow, crawling at just 4 miles per hour. But it could cross trenches and crush barbed wire, creating paths for infantry. During the Battle of Flers-Courcelette, which was part of the Somme offensive, 49 tanks were deployed under the leadership of Captain H.W. Mortimer, who commanded one of the first tank units in history. Although mechanical failures plagued many, and only 32 tanks reached the battlefield, the tanks struck fear into the German troops and made a significant impact. The debut of the Mark I signalized a revolutionary shift in warfare, and while far from perfect, it laid the foundation for the era of mechanized combat. Over the course of the battle, 2 million British and French troops participated, suffering heavy casualties. 420,000 British troops and 200,000 French troops, and over 500,000 Germans. In November, the battle ended with more than 1.1 million total casualties and only minimal territorial gain, highlighting the brutal inefficiency of trench warfare. On the Eastern Front, 1916 saw the most successful Russian offensive of the war, the Brusilov offensive. General Alexei Brusilov launched a surprise attack against Austro-Hungarian forces in June, using innovative tactics that involved short, intense artillery bombardments and coordinated infantry assaults. The offensive was a massive success, breaking through the Austrian-Hungarian line and causing over 1.5 million casualties, including 400,000 soldiers captured. with a force of 3.5 million Russian troops. Brusilov's short, concentrated artillery barrages and synchronized infantry attacks proved devastating, catching the Central Powers off guard. The Austro-Hungarian army suffered catastrophic losses. Key generals like Archduke Friedrich and Franz Conrad von Hötzendorf struggled to reorganize their forces, while Germany was forced to divert significant resources to stabilize the front. While the offensive ultimately stalled due to logistical issues, it dealt a severe blow to Austrian-Hungarian forces and forced Germany to divert troops from the Western Front to stabilize the situation. Nevertheless, it weakened the Central Powers and demonstrated that the Eastern Front was far from a stalemate. The war at sea reached its climax in May 1916 with the Battle of Jutland, the largest naval battle of World War I. Among the British ships were iconic dreadnoughts like the HMS Iron Duke and HMS Warspite, while Germany deployed vessels such as the SMS Seydlitz and SMS Derfflinger. Naval battles during this period were defined by long-range gunnery and the critical use of scouting forces, such as light cruisers and destroyers, to locate and engage enemy fleets. The British Royal Navy, led by Admiral John Jellicoe, faced off against the German High Seas Fleet under Admiral Reinhard Scheer, while Britain fielding 151 vessels and Germany just 99. The battle saw the use of dreadnoughts, heavily armored battleships, and highlighted the importance of naval superiority in modern warfare. The losses were significant. Britain lost 14 ships and 6,000 sailors, while Germany lost 11 ships and 2,500 sailors. While Britain maintained control of the North Sea, the battle emboldened Germany to intensify unrestricted submarine warfare and sinking over 500 merchant ships only in 1916. 500 merchant ships. That's a big strike to the logistics of the Allies. This tactic not only impacted the course of the war, but also played a major role in eventually drawing the United States into the conflict. The war's toll was increasingly felt on the home front in Germany. Food shortages became dire, with urban caloric intake dropping below 1,000 calories per day due to the Allied blockade. This led to widespread rationing and public unrest, with protests erupting in major cities. Women in Britain stepped into roles traditionally held by men, with 900,000 employed in munitions factories by 1916, contributing significantly to the war effort. In France, women also played a vital role, working in industries, agriculture, and hospitals to support the war. Meanwhile, countries like Italy and Austria-Hungary saw growing discontent among civilians as food shortages and inflation intensified, adding to the social strain of prolonged conflict. The shift in these generals would also have a lasting impact on women's rights and suffrage movements. In Britain, political changes saw Herbert Asquith replaced by David Lloyd George in December 1916. Lloyd George promised a more vigorous and coordinated war effort, creating new ministries to handle munitions production, shipping, and labor. In Russia, the war was taking a devastating toll. Military defeats, food shortages as well, and economic hardship, fueled by growing discontent, like all the other countries participating in the war. The seeds of revolution were beginning to sow, and by early 1917, these tensions would explode into the Russian Revolution. Across the Atlantic, the United States remained neutral in 1916. President Woodrow Wilson had campaigned for re-election on the slogan, "He kept us out of war," reflecting the widespread desire among Americans to avoid becoming entangled in the European conflict. However, German unrestricted submarine warfare threatened to change that. German U-boats targeted Allied and neutral merchant ships, including American vessels, causing outrage in the United States. The sinking of ships like the Lusitania in 1915 had already strained relations, and tensions continued to rise. Meanwhile, American businesses were profiting from the war by selling arms and supplies to the Allies. The US economy experienced a boom as factories produced weapons, ammunition, and other goods for Britain and France. This economic connection further tied America to the Allied cause. Despite the growing tensions, many Americans still remained opposed to entering the war. Anti-war movements, led by groups like the American Union Against Militarism, argued that the US should focus on peace and diplomacy rather than military intervention. The situation would take a decisive turn in early 1917, with the interception of the Zimmermann telegram. But we will get to this in the next video, so I'm not gonna tell too much about it. But in 1916, the United States was still walking a delicate line between neutrality and involvement, a balance that would soon tip towards war. As the year drew to a close, the war still showed no signs of an ending. Many millions more had died than the previous 2 years, and entire nations were exhausted. Yet, both sides, the Allies and the Central Powers, still remained determined to fight on. The year was a turning point of tragedies. It showed the true cost of total war and the resilience of those who fought. The lessons of Verdun, the Somme, and Jutland still resonate today. Join us next time as we discover the events and the history of 1917. If you enjoyed this video, learned something new, and want to support the channel, just please leave a like, make a comment maybe about what video you want to see next. And as always, this is HistoryCrafts, where history crafts itself.